Ever since the Genoese mariner Christopher Columbus, under the orders of the Spanish king and queen, discovered the Americas, it became a race for European countries to conquer and colonize the Americas. From a period of 1754 to 1763, a great world war broke out between the countries of France, Spain, Austria, Russia, and England, Portugal, and Prussia, which became known as the 7 Years' War, or in America, the French and Indian War. And the British North American colonies would heavily finance the war. When the war ended in 1763, the peace treaty had France give up all American territories except for the island of Saint-Domingue. With the 7 Years' War over, England was left heavily in debt, and decided from a period of 1764 to 1770 began to heavily tax their American colonies with many acts, including the idea of no more using American script currency, and instead they must use British pounds. So tensions began to rise between the American colonies and the British government. It all came to a head on March 5th, 1770, on the city of Boston, Massachusetts, where British troops accidentally fired into a crowd of people, which left 6 people dead. Then on April 19th, 1775, a British force of 700 men was sent out from the city of Boston to Lexington. There, the first shots were fired in what became known as the shot heard round the world. The rebels were defeated and outnumbered and were forced to retreat back to Concord, where they gained reinforcements and decisively defeated the British forces with guerrilla tactics. With the British defeated, the rebels decided to lay siege to Boston. As the result of these few battles, 49 militiamen were killed. In comparison, 73 British troops died. On June 17, 1775, attempting to break this deadlocked siege, the British Army launched an assault that would become known as the Battle of Bunker Hill. It took them 3 assaults to capture the hill, but in the end it was worth it. But they had suffered so many casualties. 115 American militia had died, and 30 American militia had been captured, 20 of whom would never return home. In comparison, 226 British troops had been killed and many more wounded. By this time, Colonel Arnold decided to invade Canada and defeat General Burgoyne. He engaged Burgoyne, but was defeated and was forced to retreat. Arnold lost 400 men and another 1,500 captured. In comparison, Burgoyne lost 100 men and 600 were captured. Finally, on March 17th, General Howe finally retreated to Washington's Grand Army, and Boston finally was recaptured. Then, on July 4th, 1776, the American Continental Congress ratified the Declaration of Independence from Great Britain written by Thomas Jefferson. The United States of America was born. The Congress also ratified the Articles of Confederation, written by Benjamin Franklin and edited by John Dickinson. General Howe decided now to capture New York City from Washington, and he defeated Washington 5 times, which forced Washington to abandon the states of New York and New Jersey. 612 American soldiers had died, and 4,200 had been captured. In comparison, the British lost 454 men and 36 captured. But then, Washington successfully defeated British General Cornwallis 3 times in just 10 days, forcing the British to abandon southern New Jersey for the rest of the war. In just that time, 87 American soldiers were killed. In comparison, 400 British soldiers died and 1,130 were captured. It's 1777, and the British desperately need something to end this war, so they dispatch a plan. General Burgoyne in Canada and General William Howe in New York City would advance through the Hudson Valley, cutting New York in half and dividing the New England colonies from the others. So Burgoyne then moved south, but was stopped at the First Battle of Saratoga. Meanwhile, General Howe had completely abandoned the plan and defeated Washington and captured Philadelphia. Washington suffered 402 men dead, and 838 were captured. In comparison, the British lost 164 men. But General Burgoyne was now faced alone to defeat the American forces, and at the Second Battle of Saratoga was defeated by General Benedict Arnold. Only 90 American soldiers were killed in this whole campaign. In exchange, 440 British soldiers were killed, and 6,222 were captured. We are now entering 1778. Both General Burgoyne and General Howe were recalled back to England, leaving General Lord Clinton in command. The British government ordered General Clinton to abandon Philadelphia and consolidate his hold in New York City. And that's where General Washington decided to make his move. 80 American lives were lost, and 250 British soldiers were killed and 50 captured. We are now entering 1779, and this is where we face a terrible tragedy about the American Revolution. After a series of raids by the Iroquois, or Haudenosaunee Confederacy, George Washington ordered General John Sullivan to take a force of 4,000 men to raid the Haudenosaunee villages. 4,500 people would die as a result of these raids. In exchange, Sullivan lost only 33 men. Meanwhile, in the South, the British had captured the city of Savannah, Georgia. By this time, General Benedict Arnold was very unhappy with how he'd been treated after his great victories, and began to sell secret plans to the British. But when he was discovered, he defected to the British Army, under the rank of Brigadier General. We are entering 1780, and the British government desperately needs something to break this war, so they hatch a plan. With the British having previously captured the city of Savannah, Georgia, they decide to land there and to expand north. The British then easily captured the city of Augusta, Georgia, and then moved on to the city of Charleston, South Carolina. It easily fell within months. In just this short time period, 529 Americans were killed and 6,092 were captured, and the British only lost 128 men. So now, there was nothing standing in the way for Cornwallis moving north and defeating Washington. So with this threat, Congress sent General Gates to defeat Cornwallis, and instead, it was Gates who was defeated. 300 American soldiers were dead, and 1,000 were captured, and only 68 British troops had died. With Gates' army defeated, Cornwallis continued to move north, but was worn down by the battles with General Greene. 139 Americans were killed in these fights, and 500 British troops had died, and 1,900 were captured. We are entering 1781, and the British government cannot believe that the war isn't over yet. With his recent defeats, General Cornwallis decided to abandon the Carolinas and move his army to Yorktown, and that's when Cornwallis made the biggest mistake of his career. From New England, General Washington and French General Rochambeau marched south all the way to the city of Yorktown. Their forces numbered about 17,000 men. Against them is 10,000 British soldiers. And a French fleet under Admiral Comte de Grasse arrived with 29 ships to help with the siege. Despite these numbers, and for 3 weeks they held, but finally on October 19th, the British forces surrendered. 28 American soldiers had died, along with 60 French. 200 British troops had died, and the remaining forces, about 7,500, surrendered, along with General Cornwallis and all his staff. And with that final defeat, England finally surrendered. The terms of the peace were very simple. All American land up to the Mississippi River would be granted to the new United States, except for Canada, which would remain under British control, and Spain would regain Florida as well. Then, on April 30th, 1789, George Washington was unanimously elected by the Congress and by the people to be the new President of the United States of America. Washington would go on to be a great president and only serve for 2 terms. He would also establish many foundations for the president and the government that we know today. Thanks for watching this video.
Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and check me out over on Patreon. The link is in the description.